Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of Not Your Mama's podcast. The title of this episode is Communication Keys and the 10-Minute Sweaty Hand Conversation. In this episode, our special guest is transformational life coach Cyn Hannah, and we'll be talking about basic communication skills. And she's going to give us a process you can use when you want to clear up something with someone you care about. We all have those times when we pull away from someone, and this process can bring you even closer. You're going to want to get a pen and paper because you're going to want to take notes for this one. So, Cyn, thank you so much for coming on again. I love having you on. If this is someone's first time meeting you, can you give a little bit about your background and where you are today?
Yes. Well, the time in my life when I wanted to make some serious changes in my life and I was having a hard time. And so I started to study how the successful people do it, how the happy people do it, and what are the steps? What do they do? And I started down that path very in earnest. And I have discovered there are specific steps, specific principles that if we follow them, we truly can live a life that we would love.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So before you share this process with us, is there one thing that stands out to you as the most important to remember when communicating with someone?
Yes, the tone. So there's different forms of communication. I'm going to give you some information, but today we're going to be talking about how to stay closer, how to stay more connected with the people that really matter to you. And when we're communicating at that level, oftentimes it's good to remember to be a good listener. Oftentimes when we say we're listening, but really we're thinking of what's the next thing I'm going to say to them? What am I going to have for lunch? How can I sway them over to my opinion? We're not truly listening. And one thing I would love to remind people that listening is not making agreement with what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So just to let them speak, and it doesn't mean that you're saying, oh, I agree. You're just listening. And when we are truly listening, we are seeking only to understand that person. We're not seeking to be right, for our opinion, as I said, to sway them over, but just to understand them. And when we come from that open place, it can make a big difference in the results in all of our conversations and our relationships.
Yeah, I think listening is a hard thing to do sometimes because everyone always wants to talk about, themselves or butt in their opinion on, what's the conversation's about and interrupting too. I mean, I know that's sometimes something I need to work on is interrupting. So are there any ground rules to follow before you can use the communication process you'll be sharing with us?
Yeah, so there's some things that I know some of these we've all given up long ago, but some we might not be aware that we still do. Mm-hmm. And the first one is no name calling. So, you may not know you're name calling someone, but when you say you are, whatever you might say they are, that is name calling. You are such an inconsiderate person. The next one is no labeling, which would be you're so selfish, that you are so inconsiderate. You're labeling them. And, and when you say those things, people automatically step back, tend to get defensive, and they're not as open to hearing what it is that you really want to share. The other is using the word always. When we use the word always, you always do that. You always say this. You always put me down. Whatever it might be, they're not hearing what comes after always. They're thinking of the one time that they didn't do that to prove, no, it's not always. And the same with you never. It's the same idea. When you say you never listen to me, they're thinking of the one time they did listen to you as proof, as evidence that you are wrong. And then they're shutting down right away from hearing the rest of that you just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Can you give some
And
examples of like alternative ways instead of saying always or never?
well, we'll get to that in the 10-minute
Perfect.
conversation,
Okay,
but
perfect.
you just
Perfect.
leave them out. And we're going to get to that because we want to always just be about what's the present moment, what's going on in the moment, not backstacking to all the times that this occurred, so that you wouldn't have the need to bring up you always, you never.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is button pushing. When we know someone really well, we know their buttons. We know what they're, where they're vulnerable, what will hurt them. And we don't want to go and use those intentionally. And oftentimes when someone's anger, it's really easy to go for the thing that we know will set them off. And along those lines, the other one is no hitting below the belt. And this is button pushing, just amped up. It's going for the emotional jugular vein. When we know someone at a deep level, we want to be good stewards of that information. We want to be trustworthy with it, and we don't want to use that against them. So those are some ground rules for always communicating with somebody. I think that can be helpful.
Yeah. So I want to dive into this more because I think it's really important for everyone to understand how to communicate effectively. So I've been so curious about the 10-minute sweaty hand conversation. Can you break that
Mhm.
down for us?
Yes. So there are times when there's some discord in our relationship, something has occurred, and we are pulling back and we're building walls. This conversation is not for every single time they do something, like they leave their dirty clothes on the floor. You
Mhm.
want to pick and choose when you pull this conversation out of your tool bag. But when you are feeling, as I said, that you're pulling back, that's the time to bring this out, because we don't want to let that resentment build up. We want to have things to be open. So we really want to be building a bridge of connection,
Mhm.
not the walls. So the first thing is to ask. So say you're wanting to talk to your husband, something has occurred, you're building the walls, and you want to talk to him about it.
Mhm.
First of all, pick when you are not still in the immediate hurt of it, when your emotions are not high and when his emotions are not high. And
Mhm.
you can do this with coworkers, with whomever you want. So, or with, doesn't matter, but I'm going to say husband and wife as the example.
Okay.
And so make sure that things are cooled. Might be take a couple of days before you can really feel that you can go and talk about this without the emotion coming back up again.
Mhm.
So when you're in that state of mind, you would ask him, is this a good time to talk? Now, if your husband's watching the football game or whatever it might be going on, and you're not going to have his full attention, it would not be a good time. So you want to ask, and if he says yes, great. And if he says no, ask when would be a good time.
Mhm.
And then you want to tell him, so that's the first step. Ask if it's a good time to talk. The second is tell them the purpose of the talk. So they're not wondering, well, what am I in trouble for now? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so it could be that the purpose is to get closer. I've been feeling a little distant. I've been feeling, and I would love to feel close to you again. So that's the purpose of the talk. Yeah. I just wondered if you had anything you wanted to say.
Oh
So I
no,
thought
I mean,
I'd
I'm just
take a
trying to
pause
listen
here.
I'm just trying to listen. I mean, I do think it's great to be strategic in when you uh go up to your partner, your coworker, or whatever it is, because you want to be able to do it when they can give you their full attention. And I do believe that when we take a step back and have the emotions cool down and we're able to even process like the argument, maybe look at from their perspective and our perspective, we can come to the table with a better conversation with them. and, looking at it from their perspective. Because sometimes when we are in the heat of the moment, we're only looking at ourselves. So, no, I think it's great. I think, we need to be mindful on when someone is ready to receive the information that we want to talk to them about. So, not when they're watching a football game or in the middle of writing an email. I think it's good to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the first step, ask if it's a good time to talk. Second step, tell them the purpose of the talk is to be closer, or whatever words you want to use. And the third step, you just state the facts.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not offering opinions, you're not labeling, you're not talking about any other times this occurred. You're just staying right in this moment, in this one. So it could be, I told you, I invited you to a special dinner that I was going to cook for you, and you didn't make it. You didn't call me and tell me that you couldn't make it home from work on time. You didn't call at all, and you were an hour late, and the dinner got cold.
Mm-hmm.
So you just state the facts. There's no, you were so inconsiderate and I can't believe, and you're always late. It's none of that. It's just state the facts. And then they can hear it as, yes, those are the facts. I didn't call. I was late for the dinner, and you did tell me you were going to cook a special dinner for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth step is to say how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And when that occurred, I felt sad, not important, not cared for. If you can put in the word thought instead of feel, it's not a feeling. So if you say, I felt you were inconsiderate, here we are back to labeling again, then you could say, I thought you were. So it's just your feelings. I felt, and not because of you,
Mm-hmm.
not you so-and-so, but just in that moment, I felt. And so that they can see, well, this is what occurred when I was inconsiderate. And then, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I also think it's important, people can write these things down, write down how you are feeling, kind of let it out on paper and think about the facts, don't just go into the conversation blindly, really maybe kind of write it down and let me know if you think this is a good idea, but just kind of write down what you think the facts are and prepare yourself. And, maybe journal and write how it made you feel so you can really understand the feeling instead of, like I said, going in blindly.
I think writing it down, if that will help you get clarity and keep you concise, is a good idea. Journaling around, everyone's going to be different. Mm-hmm. Journaling around the feelings that came up around it, if you do it in the moment, maybe it will lead you to some insight, maybe insight's helpful. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes what happens is when we focus on the feelings, so if we're journaling after the fact, it's going to bring those feelings up again. Yeah. And that's not something we want to put our attention on over and over again, because we don't want to stay in that energy. We're trying to move out of that energy into one where there's connection. Yeah. But I think that writing it down can be a really good idea, because here are the steps. Here's the concise things I'm going to say, mm-hmm. so that you don't get carried away in the moment. Yeah, no, good idea. And then after you say how you feel, the fifth step is you offer a solution. And you would say, what I would love is the next time that you're going to be late for dinner, that you call me as soon as you know, and you let me know that you're going to be late, so that I could, either keep it warm in the oven, or I could cook later, start it later, or I know that you've thought of me and you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
So you offer what the solution is that you would love for whatever has occurred. And then the final step is you say, would that be okay with you? You want to get agreement from them. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're not going to agree to whatever it is you're asking. And then the conversation can continue with, well, how would you like to handle this in the future?
Yeah.
And there's conversation, there's back and forth, there's no blame, and you can see where you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's
what?
continue.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is when you use this method, you'll find out if you have a real relationship or not. Because unfortunately, oftentimes marriages, even friendships, are really just arrangements. And they're not about caring deeply for the other person. They're not about how can we, work together for the highest good of our union.
Yeah.
And when you use this process, you get to see the reaction and you get to see where you really are.
Yeah, I agree. I think this process is super important because it keeps people grounded and leveled, and you can come from a place of results, which is the goal.
Yes.
And not hitting below the belt and really talking in a mature way, because sometimes when there's arguments going on, it's really easy to throw out you always and you never, and those below the belt conversations. So my question to you is like, what could you do if someone was on like the receiving end? Let's say their spouse is always pointing out something that they did wrong, like you're always leaving the towels on the floor, and kind of being really aggressive towards them, and and hits below the belt and kind of does name calling. Like, how should someone who's receiving that handle that so it doesn't turn into a big blow up argument?
Well, in the moment, if it's feels hurtful, then I would, and maybe in the moment, let it go, and then you can use this process. The
Mm,
other day, here are the facts.
yeah.
Is this a good time? I want to talk to you about something for the purpose of getting closer, because I've been building this resentment wall. And the facts are, the other day, you're only talking about one instance. They don't always yell at you when the towels are on the floor. But
Yeah.
the other day when you were angry with me for having the towels on the floor, and you said this, and this, whatever it might have been. Then you're just stating the facts and only about the one incident.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say how you feel. When you said those things, I did not feel that you loved me.
Yeah.
I felt that you were putting me down. I felt like I didn't matter. I felt like I didn't have value.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sharing how you feel. And then you would say, and what I would love in the future is, if you're having a bad day, if I leave the towels on the floor or something occurs, that you would just ask me nicely, could you please pick up the towels? Or that you could give me a little room, knowing I have two, 3 kids or whatever it might be
Yeah.
to take care of, and my day is full and I'm doing the best I can, and to have a little compassion for where I'm coming from. So, but whatever it is you would love, and to go through this process, and to say, would this be okay with you? Now, part of that agreement could be that what I would love is the next time you get so angry you forget yourself, that we have a code word that could, that could be love, remember love, or something. And so part of that solution could be, so the next time when you get really angry and your reaction is to put me down, I would like to have this code word to remind you that this is damaging to the relationship, and that this is not who we want to be in our union.
Yeah.
And so then the next time it occurs, you just say, remember love, and you'll see what their response is. But
No,
that
I
could be
like that
one of the
idea
solutions.
of a code word. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. And I know, like, when we've talked before in the past, like, I like the approach of like getting curious, like if
Mhm.
someone's has like a short temper or things like that, like get curious with them
Mhm.
to try to understand what's really going on. Just like, hey,
Yes.
like, what's going on with you? Why are you overreacting? Or why are you, et cetera, fill in the blank. I really think that that's a good way to approach it, instead of being on the defense, being curious and try to, like, I don't
To
know.
come from a place of love and compassion. So if they're on edge, they're a little more angry towards you. I would caution to not ask why. Why word tends to put people on the defense. But what's going on with you, honey? You seem you seem agitated. What's going on? What was your day like? And but what that takes is for you to need, for the person who's offering that, to be very grounded. Because often what happens is when our spouse starts putting their anger spewing at us, then our old unhealed stuff is going to come up, and we're going to have our own reactions, whether it's anger, whether it's we feel diminished, whatever it might be. And those are the times to really work on pushing that internal pause button.
Yeah.
Taking some long, slow, deep breaths and deciding who you want to be in that moment and what you want to create. And one thing that can really help in that moment is to ask, what would love do here? So what would love do here? And it's love of yourself, and it's love of your husband.
Yeah.
And then
your
you
friend
can see
or whoever.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think these are all great, amazing tips, because I know communication is probably the most important thing in any relationship. I think it's an important life skill, especially if someone's having a hard time communicating in, their marriage or their friendship or their coworker that they work close to. It's good to have these key tools in order to present your arguments eloquently, maturely, and just understand where that person's coming from, is understanding how to really communicate effectively. And for the audience, I am so excited to announce that Cyn will be offering a discovery session for any of the listeners. And the link is down below. And Cyn, would you like to discuss a little bit about the discovery sessions and anything else the audience needs to know before we end this great interview?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. I'd love to. So a discovery session is my gift to you. If you would like some support in getting clear on what your life that you would love to be living would look like. Oftentimes when I talk to people, or most often, their vision is fuzzy at best. So I'll help you get really clear on that. I am an expert at hearing what your limiting beliefs are, your predominant ones, in a very short period of time. And we'll also talk about what's an action step you can take that will move you towards that dream, that vision that you have would love to be living. So I have so many tips and tools. If you like these communication ones, I have so many for any area of your life. And so if you'd like to have a conversation, we'll talk on the phone up to an hour, and I would send you a questionnaire in advance to help you get clear for that call. So it would be my pleasure to help you get really clear.
Perfect. All right. Well, Cyn, thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's always such an honor. You have such amazing tips and tricks. You are the expert of the mental game of life to help people live their dream life. So I would definitely take Cyn up on the offer on the discovery session. She can help you 100%. I agree. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. So fun to be here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.